Hi, Wade. Welcome back to the podcast. Third time's a charm, and we're best friends now, so we're gonna have a great chat.
You betcha. Great to be here. Thanks for having me back again.
This conversation, as I mentioned to you, I want to discuss minerals and electrolytes because I think this is so important. Last conversation, we discussed enzymes, which I still believe are underrated because we hear people talk about vitamin D and C and now all the hormones. They're missing some very important aspects, though, of health, enzymes being one, but minerals being another one. I think this is such a huge topic, and I've said this publicly and privately, is I think there's a strong argument to be made around minerals being more important for health than the isolated nutrients in themselves, because without minerals, you can't do anything. So,
It's a big topic. I got interested years and years and years ago. I listened to a cassette tape. So that's how far back in the past we're
the
talking. Like
90s.
this is yeah,
Yeah.
this is way back there, which was put together by a fellow, a doctor named Dr. Joel Wallach. And Joel Wallach was a doctor who was also a veterinarian doctor. So he was a doctor in health and as a veterinarian, and he worked on a farm. He grew up on a farm and went through this whole thing. And he had, and the cassette was called "Dead Doctors Don't Lie."
It's true.
And I had an opportunity to actually meet Dr. Wallach, and his whole philosophy was built around that concept. And what he would say is, oh, I went to medical school and we do this, but I went to veterinarian school. And all these diseases that we were treating people with surgeries and medications and stuff like that, when it came to the animals, we were just giving them vitamins and minerals. And if you look at minerals, there's a ton of them. We hear about the big ones. We hear about calcium and magnesium and
Mhm.
every now and then some other obscure one. But that's pretty much everybody knows. But there's dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of these minerals, and there's the macro minerals,
Mhm.
calcium, magnesium, potassium, if you're getting into sodium, like these things. But then there's this whole array of minerals underneath this.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is there's a massive push by the regulatory bodies against a lot of these forms of minerals. So if you go back in time to Ayurvedic medicine practices,
Mhm.
they would get a goo in the mountains, which was essentially plant matter that had not converted into stone. It was somewhere between stone and plants.
Mhm.
And it was called humic and fulvic shale, right? Or some people call it shilajit.
Mhm.
Now, this concoction is rich with all what they call trace minerals. This is a whole array of them. And so I got into trace minerals. I got into minerals, and then I met a fellow years later in Sedona, Arizona, and he was a mineral expert.
Mhm.
And so we started talking minerals and his whole philosophy around minerals. And he had a concoction that he would make up and take minerals. And so that was very eventful. But one of the ways to think of minerals, and this is the best way for your listeners to consider the importance of minerals. So, and hopefully they're old enough to remember when they had to use the dial on the radio to pick in the stations, like, 104 and 99.5 and
Mhm.
AM and PM.
Is it bad that I remember that? I mean, I'm not that old.
Well, no, I think it's still good. I think it's still up there now. It's all digitalized now. You used to have to turn the dial, right?
Mm.
Kind of tweak it a little bit to get the right signal. Now it's just all digital.
Yeah.
But how it was explained to me, and I think this is the best representation, minerals hold a frequency band, and your cells work like your DNA works like a Tesla coil in that it amplifies and receives electrical signals which stimulate physiological processes. The minerals are like dial pieces on the band 104, 103, 102. On this, it's country music, this is rap music, this is rock and roll, etc. This is classical. So the full complement of minerals allows you to express the full potential of what a cell can do.
Hmm.
And the reality is, since we've gone to modern agricultural methods, particularly after post World War II, we went into large monoculture farming because people moved from farms and local environments into cities and started doing all these manufacturing and tertiary jobs and all these things that weren't actually with their hands in the dirt making things. And so the government boards came in and said, well, we need to increase the supply to feed all these people because everybody had a farm back home or a garden and now they don't. And so they're buying everything at a supermarket. And so in order to meet the demands, they came up with these regulatory boards for commodities. And so you had to produce so much wheat and so much corn, and that became a regulatory environment. And then they started doing these monoculture instead of crop rotation. So in the old days, you did crop rotation and you do 7 year cycles. And you would switch the crops because each crop would pull different minerals from the soil. And then one year you would grow hemp and then you plow the hemp back into the soil and you let 1 year where the microbes in the soil would just break that down and you would rotate around your crops. And what this did, this reconstituted the mineral content of the food that we were eating. Now, anyone that has gone to say like a Mennonite farm or the Amish or something that where they're using seeds from old plant histories of hundreds of years that have been passed down, and they're growing on those traditional lands. You eat a tomato or a cucumber or a carrot, it tastes like a completely different product.
Hmm.
So what your taste buds are receiving is the full bandwidth of nutrients that are in that food. Now, with the governing bodies, they looked at the calorie model and the macro model of these vitamins and minerals. And I saw a statistic, for example, if you took one orange in the 1950s
Hmm.
and compared it to oranges today, you'd need like 30 oranges or something like that to give the same nutrient content of that orange. They're both oranges, but what's in the orange isn't the same. How the orange tastes isn't the same.
Hmm.
And this all happened as we went to monoculturing. What happened is the world started uh, increasing yield to meet the demand, but not increasing the nutrient content because how they were regulating it wasn't correct. So the farmers then had to use fertilizer in order to grow the crops. What that did is it accelerated the growth, but it dropped protein content, dropped enzyme content, made the plants weaker, but the yield greater. So you had a bigger plant with less in it,
Hmm.
right? That's what happened to our food chain. Now that's been passed on multi generations. Now we're in, third or fourth generation since that time. And so the nutrient value of all our food is extremely low compared to our ancestors. Second, many of the facts panels or information elements that people are using to determine things or what's in a particular product that they're reading in a book or in an app is based on these models from 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So they think they're eating the right healthy foods, but they don't feel good or they're not right or that they feel they could have another level of energy or what's going on. Well, the reality is these key minerals that are essential to the functioning of the full bandwidth of life, both in the receiving and in the expression of, aren't available. And so by strategically targeting in your diet, supplementation with minerals, I think is completely underrated. And going back to Joel Wallach's stuff, he said that many of the causes of disease were based on these nutrient deficiencies over long periods of time. Your GP, your practitioner, your nutritionist, your naturopathic doctor, these people aren't trained in those aspects. Their whole philosophy is based on a bunch of nutritional assumptions,
Hmm.
which then the test comes in if they're doing some real testing on what's available, what's not. And to compound that's even further, all of the recommended daily allowances that are put forth were initiated to prevent like the disease functioning at an early stage, like scurvy or
Hmm.
something like that, or rickets or whatever it happened to be, these nutrient-based deficiencies. Nothing was on. We talked earlier about iodine. So if you go back to the Congress, if you go back in time and look at in the early 1900s, they were having these major problems with goiter, which is an iodine deficiency, which also contributes to dysregulation of the metabolism, et cetera, immune system suppression, all kinds of stuff. So they introduced iodization in salt. They've added iodine to salt. Now, guess what happened? So, number one, it reduced the occurrence of this disease that was
Hmm.
disfiguring and obviously compromising people. But guess what else it did? It increased the IQ of the kids by 15 points. Now, a 15-point difference in your IQ is a massive difference on the ability to ration and reasonalize. That was just one single mineral,
Hmm.
iodine. Now, iodine is part of the halogen family. And because you got iodine, you got fluoride, and you got chlorine,
And
and they
bromide.
bond onto the thyroid, right?
Hmm.
And bromine. And so the thing is they put fluoride in your toothpaste or sometimes in the water supply. They put chlorine inside the pool and inside your water supply. And these elements will bond onto your thyroid molecule much faster, creating metabolic disruption. And then if you tie that into a genetic predisposition that may not be so good in metabolizing or methylating these various minerals, you've got a two-headed monster that's going to be attacking you. And if you go into the regular models, you're not going to get addressed. And what I always tell people, eat real food, get back to things, but get bolster. Even if you eat the best diet ever, I guarantee there's going to be mineral deficiencies in that. So
Hmm.
how do you address that? You need to strategically do that and add minerals into your diet because you're right. There's all these minerals, they say, oh, they're in trace amounts. They don't matter. No, they do. They do matter. Your body's really efficient with them, and
Hmm.
some of them are unexpectedly important.
Yeah, back to the chlorine in the pool is people do feel it. I've had clients, a couple of them very aware, which is awesome because most people are not aware, and they recognized that every time they went to the pool for a swim, they just suffered for days after with all these different symptoms and they couldn't put their finger on it, and they realized they had to stop going to the pool and the symptoms subsided. But other people not as aware, they do feel rubbish, and it a lot of the time it is because of all these halogens and exposure. And lucky for us, we got fluoride back in our water here in Calgary, so that's a real treat for us.
Yes, and if you go into the history books, fluoride was used in the Nazi prison camps to create infertility and docile populations that wouldn't
Yeah,
rebel
they were
against the
easy to
guards.
control. Yeah.
And so that was distributed. And I saw some research from a medical doctor, and this was taking data from the CDC, and they showed the states in the United States that had fluoride in the water, and the rates of obesity were exponentially higher than the states that didn't have it. So not only does someone have to uh, boost their mineral content, but they also have to address the toxic elements that could be disrupting the absorption of key minerals like iodine. And of course, that's a real key player in your world relative to thyroid regulation. Um, and I take extra iodine every single day. I love it. It's just like it's a turbo booster for energy.
Hmm.
And it's amazing. And when people do it, because I have a family pattern in history of low iodine and disrupted thyroid on my mother's side of the equation, and I have suboptimal genes on that side of it, and so I address those issues strategically, and I don't have a problem.
Most doctors and naturopaths and functional medicine doctors, they're not well versed in stuff like this at all. So they see symptoms, they treat you in the most basic of ways, but they don't consider Well, what else could it be? Tell me about your environment. Tell me what you like to do for extracurricular. This stuff to the average ear, I suppose, doesn't seem to be relevant to health, but it is because if you are getting exposure to this chlorine all the time, or you work in like Bed Bath and Beyond and you're exposed to the bromide in all the beds around you all the time, this could actually be really important. But back to the RDA thing, and this, I've done a few posts on this, Wade, and it just, I'm struggling with this because of inflation as well. And I've been saying to people, most people don't realize how much of a specific nutrient or mineral they need. When we look at the RDA, it's like the minimal amount to prevent you from dying, basically. It's not health optimization, let alone thriving and feeling good. And remember our conversation, like living optimally. That's not what the RDA recommendations are for. So the average person is going around thinking they're getting enough. They're still having these issues. And I'm saying all the time to my clients and followers, you don't realize how much you actually need. It's a lot more than you realize. So you look at the RDA. Okay, I'm taking more than that because I'm taking one serving of electrolytes a day. Okay, it's better than the RDA, but it's still well below what you need. Like you need a lot more than you realize to live your best life, be your best self, like have this kind of, as you mentioning, the full spectrum of energy in, energy out. And because a lot of people do turn to supplements nowadays, because again, food quality is shit. And yeah, we do use sea salt, we use what we can, but when it comes to supplementing, then the prices can be exponential, especially in Canada, as you know. So then I'm like, oh my God, how do I get through? This is such a catch-22. You need more, but I understand it's getting expensive. And then I come to a dead end. I'm like, what do I do here?
Well, this is if people are listening to this podcast, um, obviously they're interested in health. So we're talking to what I would call a motivated party. And I'm going to speak to them directly and speak to your listeners directly. What we're talking about here is a robust level of health and vitality that's not experienced by the general population. Joel Wallach identified that the average life expectancy of a medical doctor was in the middle of 50s.
50s, yeah.
So why would you take health optimization advice for someone who had a life expectancy that was 20 years below the general population? That just made no sense and didn't have the background to understand that.
Mhm.
What we're suggesting, or I'm suggesting, and you're suggesting is like, look, you're here. You came here because what you were doing didn't work. And intuitively you were drawn to this conversation and to you in particular because you said, she's got something that I want. And if you want to get what she wants, you got to do what she says you need to do. And that means you need to let go your outdated paradigms, your best ideas. And when it comes to your health, unfortunately, in the environments that we live in, you have to allocate more resources to your health than you are doing anything. The system is stacked against you. The regulatory environment in Canada, is ridiculous. Health Canada is a joke. It is an arm of the pharmaceutical industry because sick people are clients for that industry. They're not protecting your health. They are disrupting your health and they're selling you a story that your medical care costs are going to keep you healthy. That's sick care stuff.
Mhm.
And that care is becoming so compounded that it's not really care anymore. There's people dying all over the place because they can't get an organ transplant or they can't get a surgery that they need or they can't get the proper treatment because there's too many people going to the hospital. So you have to be able to recognize and take control of your life and your responsibility and your health and say, look, I need to follow somebody that's figured this out. You have an amazing transformative journey. These are the things that you've learned along the way, and you have to let go of these paradigms and you have to let go and recognize those people don't have your best health in mind. They don't. Not only do they not have it in mind, even if they did, they wouldn't know how to give you the tools to get there. And third, it's the regulatory and government organizations around us are so uh, ossified in their corruption and ineffectiveness and inability to deliver. If you are going to trust your health with that organization, I guarantee you're going to be sick. I guarantee you're not going to experience your best life. I guarantee you're going to be on medications, surgery, and will not only have a premature death to what you're capable of, the last 20, 30 years of your life is going to be a revolving door between specialists and testing and medications and feeling bad and missing family events and not being able to work and not being able to do the thing. That's where it's headed. So you got a choice. People have a choice. You either get on board with this and do this and test it out for yourself, or, and that means you're going to have to devote money. Hey, you know what? Maybe I don't need $500 worth of TV apps. Maybe I don't need to go to the bar and drop 150 bucks on an evening. And if you actually look objectively at where a person's spending their money and what that value actually, so what is the value that's providing versus I'm going to spend my money over here and I'm going to increase the quality of life. And there is no single thing that will increase the quality of your life than better health. There's nothing.
Mhm.
No amount of money. You can't buy it. You like you ask any sick person, any person that's sick, any person that's compromised, what is the one thing they want? They want their health back. Why? Because it is the most valuable thing.
Mhm.
And so when someone can shift their prioritization, your health is your greatest asset and you have to protect it like the king and queen guarding the crown jewels of the empire. Like you need whatever it takes. And you're on the front lines of that model. So the fact that you're talking about minerals, the fact that you're getting into this is a critical element. Everybody needs to supplement their diet with minerals.
Mhm.
Everybody.
Mhm. Yeah.
And way more than you think. And they're
Yeah.
not that expensive for the value you actually get over time.
So underrated. Dr. Ray Peat, if you know who he is, just to touch on one of his recommendations was calcium. So most people know the macros, like we mentioned, the sodium, potassium, magnesium. Calcium to an extent. We know calcium is in dairy and ice cream, but I think a lot of people don't correlate it to being an actual mineral. But Dr. Ray Peat said, especially for very stressed women, they should be supplementing with 2,000 plus milligrams a day, which is a lot, as you know, way more than the RDA. But that's just one example. What I find with my clients and even with myself, and you'll get this too when you overtrain, like when you push hard and you get the dopamine hit, so you keep going and going, but the next day, man, does it catch up on you and your central nervous system is just shot, and I'll know, shit. I didn't have enough minerals yesterday. I should have, because the reflection of the central nervous system, to give the ladies an example, is if I'm trying to do my eyeliner or mascara, my hand is shaking. So my central nervous system is shot. That means the electrical capacity there is not firing at full force and it's not firing in equilibrium. It's like sporadic. It's like, like one of the old movies like Back to the Future or something when the car was starting and it spurts out all the gas at the end. It's like your energy system is trying to work, but it's jotting, it's just spurting, and it should be smooth. You should not have shaking hands. You should not have the jitters all the time. And that right there is a prime reflection of your central nervous system crying for more minerals slash electrolytes. And regardless if you overtrain or push yourself too hard, when women are very, very stressed, and I'm just targeting women right now because God designed us to be more sensitive when it comes to stress. Thank you, God. Um, Women push, 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 and we've got our careers, we've got kids, husbands, houses, extracurricular. I gotta hit the gym, I gotta do this, and we go, go, go. And most women, their central nervous system is destroyed, and we see adrenal issues, loads of anxiety. And I think one of the most basic solutions for this that we're overlooking is a shit ton of minerals. You will fix half of your problems if you take a lot of minerals.
It's a great observation, and people who do that get it. So I would branch the health and health optimization community that the ones that are really outperforming their age bracket, all of them take massive amounts of minerals. I don't know any that don't. The other element is too, I think I want to bring this up because you talked about pushing, is people take things like caffeine in order to give them a bump, a boost. Get the coffee in the morning, right? Get the coffee in the afternoon for the lull. Now,
No, no, not in the afternoon.
caffeine actually reduces the absorption of minerals.
hmm
And then you have to look at your methylation cycles. And with methylation is maybe that you have suboptimal methods. Maybe your diet is really high in calcium and low in magnesium. Magnesium's the control on a 2-to-1 ratio. And deep sleep, rest and relax response, the is all related to magnesium. So I call magnesium as a miracle mineral.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why we make one of the best magnesiums on the planet. I think it is the best magnesium. Somebody might debate that, but anyways, um, when people start with that as an adjunct, it's like, hey, try this magnesium and see what happens. And what happens is that cortisol drops off, the sleep cycle increases. So you go from like no deep sleep, which is your regenerative sleep, to like massive amounts of regenerative sleep. And you're like, oh, wow, I wake up and I don't have brain fog and crusty eyes and can't drag myself out of bed. Because typically when you're in that situation, you got all these demands that you talked about, your family, your kids, and your work and all this sort of stuff. You reach for the stimulant.
Mhm.
And what you really need is reach for a glass of water with a bunch of minerals.
Oh yeah. Start your day with some sea salt, some lemon juice, and yeah, as I refer, you're creating a little pool that your adrenals and central nervous system can pull from
Correct.
then.
Correct.
I know I mean, when we're going through our nutrition and even personal training, um, they teach us about the amino acid pool, and according to nutrition, at least back then when I did it, that was the only pool that we had per se in the body. I don't believe that's true at all.
It's
I
not.
think if we can backload and upload and have reserves, we're going to be much better off for the remainder because your body is smart. The
Oh, it's
triage
so smart.
theory, like,
It's so smart, and a lot of our minerals is stored in our bones. And of course, for females, going back to that, the tradition is oftentimes, especially by the time they hit menopause or premenopause, they start seeing massive loss of bone density. Well, that bone density um, drop off happened first. There was a mineral deficient diet going on. Then there was the lack of resistance training, so not putting load on the system.
Mhm.
Then there was the stress, creating the cortisol dump where your body has to dump extra minerals to mitigate all of this. And then when the hormones, which were keeping the ship going, crash, all of the preliminary stuff that led to that now become the avalanche. These were little snowballs, and then that's the avalanche of collapse. And coming back from that takes, if you think taking some minerals are expensive,
Yeah,
start coming back from menopausal uh,
and osteoporosis.
dysregulation and osteoporosis and osteopenia and neurological deregulation and the emotional vacillation that occurs with that time because your body doesn't have it hasn't had those reserves forever, and now you just hit the breaking point. And we'd like to avoid that for people by ensuring they have a very mineral rich diet and supplementing with minerals because it's almost impossible to get all the minerals you can need or use. And especially if you're going to that high performer level that you're talking about, you're really going to take your body to the next level. You're going to take your life to the next level. You're going to take your brain to the next level. You got to, if you're driving a sports car, you got to put premium fuel. You got to take that thing into the shop more often. You're going to put the work in. But you know what? When you take the top down, you go out for a cruise around the block, feels better.
And
It
everyone
feels
says,
better than driving a
wow.
beater.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And the sense, the satisfaction of driving that vehicle. And so I think that there is a sports car inside of every single person on the planet, and bringing that thing out, you need the high octane fuel. And if you look at racing, you look at, I like sports cars and stuff, they would use a fuel optimizers. In other words, they're increasing the octane of the
Mm.
fuel for the high performance car so it gets more horsepower and go faster, got
Yeah.
more power. It's no different when you are drinking mineral enriched food, you're eating mineral enriched food, you're drinking mineral enriched beverages. Well, now you have higher octane fuel for your cells to operate and create those electrical transmissions that the chemical reactions are dependent on. And so
Mm.
oftentimes the medical industry just looks at the chemistry and they don't realize that underlying the chemistry is electricity. And that electricity is controlled by mineral content and the will,
Mm.
the combination of the two.
Mm.
And if the mineral content's low, the will is low. And if the will is high and the mineral content's high, boy, you can do miracles.
Well, I like that analogy. That was a good analogy, the sports car. Sports cars tend to run nice and smooth, unlike a 1990s Dodge, which is wrecking going up the road with
Yeah.
your frequency novels.
Yeah,
Um,
so I always I'd ask people I learned this from my coaches. I turn Pintos into Ferraris. If you were to call yourself a car, how would you say that you were performing? Where would you rate yourself? Are you a beater from the dump? Are you an F1 Formula car?
I'm
Where
a,
are you on that equation? And
yeah.
what kind of car, if you were a car, would you like to be?
I am right now a Jeep Wrangler, strong, capable, but I'm working my way to being not an electric, but still a fuel injected engine G-Wagon Mercedes. That's
There
like,
you go. Well,
I'm
you're
going
out in
there.
Calgary, so you need something for the winter. A sports
I
car. You
do,
need
I
you need a
actually,
four-wheel drive. You need a four-wheel drive that can perform in all kinds of territories, and that's a good analogy. So I
I
think the
have a
G-Wagon is a
Jeep
good
and
idea.
I'm walking out of the gym one day and beep beep and some guy walks past. He's like, "That's your car?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You look like your car." And I was like, "I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you."
That's
Anyway,
great.
because we could ramble, let's go back to what you kind of alluded to there and I touched on. I want to highlight this point is the burn rate of minerals, as we would call it, the burn rate. The burn rate, and correct me if I'm wrong, basically means that how fast you're burning through your mineral reserves based on the requirement that your body has in that moment, in that hour, in that day. What, depending like overtraining, how hard you're training, how stressful your day was at work, how little sleep you got, how mineral deficient you are, that's all going to influence your burn rate, how fast you're burning through your minerals. And then that, of course, is going to influence the requirement of the minerals that you need to then replenish.
In my course, the Awesome Health course, 84 days, I have a video in that course, and it's called The Bucket Theory of Nutrition. Now, I'm going to explain what the bucket theory is for your listeners because I think it's really important. First off, I came up with the concept after reading a book that came out in the 1970s. It was a text-like book of all this research, and it was done by uh, two-time Nobel Prize winner Dr. Linus Pauling.
Mm.
Most people know him for vitamin C discoveries. Then you have Dr. David Hawkins, who led the largest psychiatric practice in America and became kind of enlightened being. And then Dr. Abram Hoffer, who became one of the most influential nutritionists in Canadian history.
Was it? Yeah.
And those three characters came up with orthomolecular psychiatry. And they were taking, now we're not talking people that, hey, I'm feeling a little depressed. We're talking schizophrenia. We're talking the voices talking in your head. We're talking about people in a
Red
mental
rum.
institution at that time. Yeah, we're talking severely mentally compromised people. And they recognized that they were two elements, too much toxicity in the system. So, for example, Dr. Hawkins had this one patient that was totally mad. And he said, well, they're mad as a hatter. And he said, and then he thought, well, mad as a hatter. Why did hatters go mad? Well, they used
Mercury.
mercury. And
Hmm.
so he said, I'm going to run a mercury test on this person. Sure enough, the mercury tests were off the thing. They took vitamin C and dumped vitamin C and did a vitamin C flush for a period of time. And then I guess what? They fixed the person with vitamin C. Well, they started using that and they started looking at, well, how many mineral deficiencies do we have? What's inhibiting the minerals? What needs the minerals? What would happen if we started super saturating people with minerals or vitamins and this type of this was nutritional healing at its highest level. So they wrote this beautiful book in 1970. How they even figured this stuff out back then, I don't know. It's a really thick, dense book. I don't recommend reading it. It's too heavy. But I got it. I got a copy in my library upstairs.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at this and I'm blown away. And so then I started thinking about it and I started looking at the bodybuilding world. Now, bodybuilders eat an extraordinary amount of food to support an extraordinary amount of muscle,
Hmm.
right? And they have to be very specific because they want to build muscle and lose body fat. So it's very, very precise because those are two things that you're trying to overcome evolutionary biology. So they're very specific. And I come from that world. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Well, I can see that they're optimizing for their burn rate on protein and carbohydrates and fats in order that they have an excess of energy that's targeting to fuel the growth of muscles because building muscles takes a lot of energy, not just the workouts, but the recovery and repair. And I went, okay, I can look at the bodybuilders and I can look at these medical doctors. What's in between? And that's bucket theory of nutrition. And the bucket theory says this. The bucket, imagine any vitamin, any mineral, any nutrient that you need in your body is the maximum that you could hold is like a bucket full. You
Hmm.
can hold a bucket. Now, whatever that is in the body would vary based on the nutrient or the needs of the system. Your lifestyle is a hole in the bucket. And that's how much of that particular product is draining. So we can imagine a bucket of water and a little hole, and the hole is your lifestyle. Now you add kids, that hole gets a little bigger. You add stress in your life, that hole gets a little bigger, right? You go through a tragic element in your life, some illness, that hole keeps getting bigger and you're dumping that out. What most people look at their nutrition, they're looking at that RDA or they're looking at the minimum amount ever. So at best, they're only putting in as much as they're burning, and they were deficient already. So they got the hose on the bucket all the time, and it's just enough to keep from dying or falling apart. What I recommended is to borrow from these Nobel Prize winners, the founders of nutrition in modern age, and
Super
say,
saturate.
super saturate with that product, that middle. Do that for 30, 60, 90 days. And then when you start feeling the benefits of it, start titrating down to get to the amount that you're burning. And then if you go through a period where you're going to increase it, then you up the dosage a little bit, right? To meet the needs so that you always operate from a full bucket. And then also, if there's situations where you don't have the optimal situation, you've got a reserve to count on.
Hmm.
You've got that extra gear that you go on. So oftentimes I've deployed that philosophy in my life. I'll give you an example. I had a last month, I was traveling all over the world. I'm exposed to radiation from planes. I've had several days where I didn't sleep. Sometimes on one occasion, I didn't have any sleep for 3 days. Two other occasions, I didn't have any sleep for 2 days. I flew across the planet multiple times. I got in a car, drove 20 hours nonstop from Vancouver to Los Angeles the other day. Didn't sleep on that. Had to get up on 3 hours sleep and host a bunch of meetings and podcasts and all that stuff. And guess what? Didn't feel any negative effects from any of that as a guy in his 50s. Well,
Hmm.
why is that? It's because of what I've been doing in the 30 years. I got the reserves to draw. Now, I can't maintain that for an extended period of time, but I literally had a whole month like that, a whole month. And was fine. But during that month, you can bet I was bolstering up my mineral content, my enzyme content. I doubled down on my probiotics,
Mhm.
right? I did everything. I amped up all that I could push myself at that level because I knew the hole in my bucket was huge.
So if you hadn't slept for that amount of time, um, the sleep specialists at least tell us if you don't sleep for 72 hours, you pretty much have the same brain activity as someone who is drunk. So then we know like if you don't have a good quality sleep, you're going to have the symptoms of neuroinflammation, to just feeling the inflammation in the head, ringing in your ears, the almost feels like you're slightly dizzy, slightly a hangover. And what do we, as in us practitioners, what would we correlate the main reasons to a hangover being? Well, it's a mineral deficiency because alcohol depletes your minerals and dehydrates you, hence why you get a hangover. But if you can super saturate your tissues before you go out on a night, you can mitigate a lot of that hangover, which would go back to what you're saying with not sleeping. Technically, you should have had the worst hangover, but you didn't because you had preloaded.
Yes, and it turns out that during that duration, we happened to do a one of our advanced brain training sessions for a week. And I came in, and we usually load up before we go to push our brains to the max. We're training brains 9 to 12 hours a day. And we usually do a precursor warm up. Now, I was traveling, I couldn't do that. So I'm flying in on the seat of my pants, couldn't do the precursor, came in on almost no sleep for weeks, plus all the travel and everything else. I walk in, we're hooking up our brains, and it's an advanced group of folks that are doing it. And the neurofeedback expert looks at my brain and says, "Well, your brain's kind of boring because it's working perfectly.
God forbid.
It's all fine. Like there's no hot spots, there's no low spots. It was just total clear, clean. There's one little tiny aspect of it. We did a little bit of stim on that, and it was fixed in a minute. Like my body was responding like that so quickly. So I had a snapshot to actually prove it just turned out that way. I didn't intend it to be that way, but funny you should bring that up because it's like, and I'm not saying that to brag. What I'm saying is I had a lifestyle that absolutely, what you just said is absolutely true. You have sleep deprivation. There's almost nothing working. Your motor skills go down, your functional go down, your thought process, your memory gets shot, your emotional regulation, blood sugar, it just crashes everything. So how was I able to do that? Minerals was one of the key elements to it. And
I
let
think
me tell you,
so.
when I'm in those situations, I don't eat on planes, but I drink minerals.
Yes, I don't, but I'll do minerals, hydrogen, and collagen and tea, and that'll just keep me.
Yep.
It manages my, which collagen is another thing. Collagen, I think, is underrated in what we were saying, dosage. A lot of people will take the minimum amount of collagen. They'll do
Yeah,
one
you got to load
scoop
up.
and then they say, well, I tried it for a month and it did nothing. So or my favorite one, and people laugh at this, is my dermatologist said it's a waste of time. I'm like, your dermatologist's an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. At a minimum, my clients are having 40 grams of collagen a day. That's a conservative approach. Still, it should be a lot more, but it's a lot more than what people are recommending. And that again goes back to the confusion of people not knowing actually you need a lot more than you think you do. Glycine
Hmm.
is another example. A minimum of 12 grams we need, which, well, apart from most people don't know what glycine is, but they'd be lucky to get 1 gram, and then they don't realize why they're aging so fast or why they've so much inflammation. So we've established minerals are really important. In my opinion, with the women I work with, and I do work with men, but my focus is you need a shit ton of minerals and electrolytes because you are so stressed. You're putting so much demand on your system that it's having this downstream effect from the pituitary, thyroid, adrenals, your central nervous system shot. You've got anxiety, you're not sleeping. Oh, wait, you've also got cravings too because your body's crying out for these minerals. So you're looking for chocolate, you're looking for red meat. So I'm trying to connect the dots for my clients. Like, this is essential. But another thing I want to touch on right now, Wade, as we move into the fun that is a Canada winter here in Alberta, all of a sudden it's gotten really cold, like out of nowhere. I'm like, where did this come from? So, what happens then when it gets really cold? As you know, the Alberta air for sure just gets so dry. So dry. And then people have their heating on nonstop. They've their car heat or air conditioning on. You're going in and out of stores in your office, and it's just so dry and so much air pulling water out of your system. So that increases dehydration, which increases the stress response. Now your burn rate's higher, but you don't know that you should hydrate more, especially with electrolytes in this weather to replenish. And now I have people the last few days. Oh, I'm waking up with these headaches. I've been so constipated for days. Yes, you slept 8 or 9 hours with the heating on. What do you
Yeah.
think that's doing to your body? And of course, you're waking up with a headache.
A great example, one of the things that I do as a regulatory element is I jump on my scale before I go to bed, and I jump on my scale in the
See how
morning.
much water you lose.
And it's anywheres between 3 to 5 pounds, and I keep my temperature at about 67 degrees at night for
Mhm,
cooling, 67 degrees Fahrenheit. So like I keep it cold. You would call that cold.
mhm.
Regular room temperature is around 72. I drop it because your body goes into sleep better if it's cooler.
Yeah,
And then when I get up in the morning, I see this container here. I don't know if I can show that very
you
well.
can
I don't
kind
know.
of see it. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of in that back.
it's a
There we go.
go. It yeah.
This is a 1 liter.
Oh, I have one of those.
Yeah, this is a bioptimizer shaker cup. So I get up in the morning and I come downstairs. I have a shaker cup with my protein in it because I want to hit protein early in the day. 50 grams right off the bat. I drink one of those. I drink another one with my vitamins and minerals, and then I'll drink another one at the gym with all my electrolytes in it. So by the time I get back from my gym, I've drank 6 liters, excuse me, 3 liters of mineral rich water, amino acids, essential fatty. I take all of my nutrients. I take all my supplements early in the morning. I just load the system up. Now,
Yeah.
since that time, I've had 2 more of these. One with some electrolytes, one with I do a tea. I like longevity tea. I drink the longevity tea. It's really nice. Spring Dragon. I don't have any interest in the company or financial interest, but I think it's just great tea. You get used to it. At first, it's kind of weird, and then you start drinking it a lot, and you're like, oh, that stuff's really good. And so I
Like
drink
yerba
that. So
mate.
yeah, so I drink 6, 7 liters of water a day, and I never drink it just plain. Like I'm always adding stuff to it, and I'm dumping minerals, and I'm doing all that stuff to stay on top of my game because I know I output hard. And some days, I do pee a lot. I do go to the bathroom a lot, and a good check on your urine is your urine should be clear. It shouldn't be yellow. If you're yellow, you're really dehydrated. Your urine should be, that's another test that you want to watch. Your urine should be clear.
I don't think there's a problem with peeing so much because one, the more you have to walk to the bathroom, the more steps you're getting in. But
Correct.
two, every time you pee, you're flushing your kidneys and your bladder, and people don't,
Correct.
not only are you flushing them, you're getting rid of toxins that have been diluted. It seems as we're on the hydration aspect of things. My goal is to backload my fluids as well, that by 11 a.m. I want to have 3 liters of fluids. And just for everyone, we're not just talking about plain water because too much plain water can make things worse. So we're talking about fluids that are mineral rich or electrolyte rich. So I drink out of the Vase bottles. They're 800 mils and they're glass, so I can just
They're
rewash it,
great.
reuse it. So I have two of these a day. One has electrolytes, the other one has a blend of B vitamins, vitamin C, chlorophyll, and electrolytes. And then I have a liter bottle that I got in IKEA, just like it was a really cheap one, $1, and it's glass. And that has my essential amino acids in it, which I use ATP Labs. So they also have electrolytes in it too. Then I've got my tea. A lot of people don't know that tea does have minerals in it. It's low amounts, but it still has minerals. Then I'll have a big bottle of San Pellegrino as well. I'll have 3 to 4 teas a day, one four sigmatic coffee. And so for someone, I'm way smaller than you, I'm 140. I need a minimum of 4 liters of fluid a day
Yep.
to function. And I always say fluid because I want to remind my clients that includes your protein powders, your soup, your bone broth, if you
Yep.
stew, whatever it is, like it's fluid. Too much plain water, which I'm sure you'll agree, can be detrimental in a sense. If you're already mineral deficient, you're just going to dilute that even more, and now you're going to feel even worse than you did. And that's a concept of, as I say, not to be crude, if it's going in one hole and out the other pretty fast, you're not even absorbing that water.
Hmm.
It's just going through you.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more on all that stuff. So
As we wrap up, though, I wonder, can you help me with this?
sure.
When I'm talking to my clients, uh, this is where I kind of get a bit tongue-tied, and maybe you can help me. I'm like, make sure you stay on top of your minerals and electrolytes, which are technically the same thing, but I need to find a better way of terming it or a better name. So most people don't know that minerals and electrolytes are the same in the sense, yeah, there's loads of minerals, but electrolytes are just some of the minerals that have an electrical charge. Although we could argue that all minerals do carry an electrical charge. But anyway, so then they get confused, and it's a case of sometimes with me, as I'm sure you've picked up, that I'll keep talking and talking and talking, and then people are just like, I'm lost. They get confused.
You know, I just break it down into uh here's the minerals for your blood, here's the minerals for your body. Take this one, be done with it.
Yeah.
Simple, very simple. And have it sitting out in the morning. Have like I have my container, my empty containers sitting on the counter.
Mhm.
So I have two kitchens, one kitchen down here in my office, one, and then I have my kitchen upstairs. So I come down to my office in the morning, I have my supplement stack there. I have those cups sitting right on the counter, and I know I got to drink those cups. So again, it comes back to the reticular activating system. You have your specialized bottle. So
Mhm.
you might want to designate which bottles for which and say, I need to have that in the afternoon. And then you routinize it.
Mhm.
And so when you put it into a routine, you don't think about it anymore. Like I don't think about what I'm doing in the morning. I don't think about hydrating in the afternoon. I don't think about checking my weight at night and see how much weight I lost, how much water I lost. And it can vary significantly. When I'm on the road, it changes a lot. Go to Las Vegas or something in the desert. See what that's like. Go to Dubai and go to the desert and see what happens. I've seen myself vary 8 to 10 pounds in a day on hydration. And when you're talking hydration, you've got to mineralize that hydration.
Hmm. Yeah, and the visual is so important. You have to have your bottles out and they need to be empty by the end of the day. And then before I go to bed, I refill everything. It's back on the counter, so it's there in the morning and I just grab it. And the problem solved. Like there's no excuse. And as for the fluid, of course, most women know with the fluid around our menstrual cycle, it can fluctuate on average 3 to 6 pounds. Like it just goes to show how sensitive the body is to irregularities in our fluid balance. And part of
Totally.
the way to help mitigate that or manage that is adequate hydration for sure. Well, Wade, if you were to finish with one line on basically the importance of minerals, why you think they're so important, what would it be? Maybe you're,
Minerals are the spark plugs in the engine of life. And in order to fire up the fuel that you're consuming, you need a spark plug in your car to light the fire. And if
Mhm.
you don't have your spark plugs all operating perfectly, which are your minerals, you're not going to fire up the fuel that you have. You're not going to have the energy that you deserve and your body's designed from. And instead of going down the street in your upgraded, super macked out G-Wagon, you're fumbling down the road in a broken down, rusty out vehicle that you're not sure is going to make it all the way to your destination. Pick your choice. Which one do
Yeah.
you want to be?
One last thing that we did forget to mention, because we mentioned iodine and I had mentioned to you Dr. Brownstein. And Dr. Brownstein, one kind of message he drives home a lot with iodine and all minerals is because hormones are such a hot topic right now. He says a lot of people don't realize that in order to make hormones, you need minerals as well.
Yep.
So,
Everything.
mm.
Everything needs minerals. It sparks up everything.
Well, thank you for your time again, Wade. A pleasure
Hey,
as
my
always.
pleasure. Thanks for having me on board, and always a great to chat and catch up. With best wishes for you over the fall, and I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon.
We will. I'll connect people to your Instagram, your website, your course. My clients do use your products, so I'll connect everything in the description, the usual.
Thanks so much.
Well, thanks for your time, Wade. We'll chat soon.
You bet. Take care.